Welcome to Principles of Personal Defense, a principle-based approach. And I call it a principle-based approach because what we're doing here is we're working off a set of principles that help us to employ techniques, tactics, and procedures. A lot of people will take a martial art and they'll study that martial art, but they won't really talk about the principles that are the foundation for our personal defense. And when I say personal defense, what I mean is your family, your community, and obviously yourself. These assumptions are so foundational that you won't understand the principles unless you see these presuppositions. So there are three assumptions. Now, I'm not just standing up here trying to give you information. I want to persuade you, hopefully, to take on these presuppositions for yourself, for your family, for your community, to understand and then be able to apply personal defense. Okay, so let's talk about those presuppositions. The first one is this, that man is capable of all kinds of evil. And when I say man, I mean mankind, I mean men, women, and I mean governments are capable of all kinds of evil. And we have to understand this. You know, a lot of people don't actually agree with this assumption. A lot of people say, no, we're good. We just need the right conditions or the right environment, etc. No, the actual truth of the matter is that man is capable of all kinds of evil. If we look at the Nazis and what they did to the Jews. We can look at Pol Pot, we look at Mao, we can look at Stalin. All of these things, massive atrocity. But it's not just that. It's the Mansons and the Dahmers. You know, a lot of people say, whoa, those are outliers. You know, those are just individuals that are crazy. It's like, no, what I'm getting at here is that man is capable of all kinds of evil, even regular mankind. So if we look at natural disasters in the United States, look at Hurricane Katrina, for example, we have what is called, what I like to call, a thin veneer of civility in our country. So everyone is restrained, and they're restrained on this thin level. When that is disrupted, you see man do all kinds of evil. Okay, so in Hurricane Katrina, we saw murder and rape and assault, burglary, robbery, etc. Lots of violent crime because that thin veneer went away. And that was a tiny percentage of the country. The entire rest of the country was doing just fine. It just impacted that one area. And even though all the resources that we put into play were put down there, we still had all those types of things happen. There's a thing called the Stanford Prison Experiment that really illustrates the idea of regular people, what we call regular people, doing bad things, okay, turning evil, if you will. The Stanford Prison Experiment was an experiment done by a professor at Stanford University. And he took students. And each of these students, about 10 on each side, you had 10 prison guards. They were going to play the role of a prison guard. And then you had 10 prisoners. They were going to play the role of prisoners. And his whole premise was this. Well, what he wanted to discover was that if he did nothing, if there was no restraints put on anyone, what would happen? And he wanted to record and see what would happen. Well, this was supposed to last 2 weeks. It lasted 6 days because it got so out of control so fast. These were regular people, and they turned, and when that thin veneer went away, they did evil things. Okay, so we have to understand that at a fundamental level to have a personal defense be part of our life, to be a way of life. The second presupposition is this, is that the right of self-defense is unalienable, as our founders put it, or inalienable. Okay, our rights to self-defense don't come from government. Now, I want to be careful when I say that, because when I say that, and I say it's an inalienable right, it doesn't come from government, that is true. And I believe that at my core. However, we are still placed upon, by government, we are restrained in that. So, in other words, government doesn't fully recognize that inalienable right. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more and discuss in detail how that impacts your personal defense. Now we come to the third presupposition. And this is what I want you to do. I want you to watch this short video, and I want to see if you can come up with the third presupposition. Okay, so I'm going to play the video, and then I'm going to talk about it. But what I want you to think about is like, okay, what am I assuming here? What am I assuming this by watching this video, by understanding the video? What is the assumption? So again, we're looking for that third assumption, that third presupposition. By the way, this is not some third world country. This is Baltimore, Maryland, United States. Okay, did you get it? That third assumption is this: law enforcement has no duty to protect you. And furthermore, they can't protect you. Okay, so that is a fundamental presupposition that we must embrace. Law enforcement can't protect you, and nor do they have a duty. And that was laid out all the way at the Supreme Court, which ruled in favor of Castle Rock, which is a town in Colorado, against Gonzalez, who is a woman whose husband kidnapped their 3 daughters and then eventually killed them. She had a restraining order against them, and she ended up suing the town based on the fact that, hey, they didn't protect her. She had called and said, this guy's dangerous. They didn't do anything, and she sued. Well, she won in district court, but that made its way all the way up to the Supreme Court, who then came down and said, no, the police have no constitutional duty to protect you. You don't have a constitutional right to be protected by law enforcement. Okay, that's an important understanding that we must embrace. Okay, so in review, our 3 assumptions. Man is capable of all kinds of evil. The right to self-defense is inalienable. And law enforcement cannot protect you. You have to take these on and understand these to implement personal defense in that of your family and that of your community. This is a great quote by Jeff Cooper, and I'm going to be talking about him here in just a minute. And it says this: the police cannot protect the citizen at this stage of our development, and they cannot even protect themselves in many cases. It is up to the private citizen to protect himself and his family, and this is not only acceptable, but mandatory. What Jeff Cooper is saying here is he is simply recognizing the fact that police can't do it. This quote was said long before the Supreme Court ever said that police have no duty to protect you. Okay? It's a fundamental understanding. We must embrace it. I have to throw this up here just because it's good. It says, what's the point of being afraid of the zombie apocalypse when you're already a zombie? Okay, we can't be zombies. We need to be able to take responsibility for our own personal defense.